scenario which is originated from this user story and acceptance criteria in that user story. That's sufficient. You don't need to document it in any other form. Thank you.
Hi, over here. I just have one question. It's a general question. You have this product which has been growing and is in agile mode from 2010, especially large. And the effort we have been implementing to run those regression suits and automation suits is tremendous. So, what is the best way we can be still agile and still can do both regression and automation?
The same question, because I gave a couple of options there. The team currently which we are following is like one of the approaches being a sprint behind and trying out, and the other option was like going with the sprint, having a dedicated SDET or an automation engineer with your team and trying to automate. Along with that, what you have to keep in mind is the automation suite. It may be very difficult to start off with your product itself. So if you have a couple of product applications, like around for us, it is like 20 applications. Start off with the end-to-end or the integration touch points. So that would be a start point for you. Because rather than just concentrating on the big or the high-level application as a whole, it would become very difficult. So start off with the interfacing points, then drill down and come to the next level of having a release level test case automation. Then go to the next level of having your automation suite for the regression test cases. Check with your product owner. Out of 100 test cases, give me the very critical ones. Let me start off automating that. Maybe out of 100, only 10 would be the very critical one. Ensure that you run those in automation suite and get it executed. That would be a good starting point for you to go about it.
So you must quick bite from you because you're considered. Mr. JP, if you can just ask Mr. Srinivas.
Sure. Yeah, we both are from technical background. I know him very well.
Yeah, I think Diti was quite right when she said about prioritization. But your question is not about how to start. Your question is about we already have demand. What do we do about it? So that's your question. So the thing is, one thing you can see is if you look at your whole test suite, let's say 1,000 tests. Okay, I don't know, it may be 10,000 for you. But if they're all passing every day, then there's no point in running them every day. But let's say of the 1,000, 900 are passing every day, but 100 of these are sometimes failing. So those 100 definitely you retain because they're the ones that are pointing out the fragile parts of the code, which may be breaking. So that you retain, and the rest 900 rotate them through. Don't run them all the time. Yeah? So you need to write some scripting around this.
Yes,
technical debt that you already incurred. That's the reason why your suite size is more. So as you rightly mentioned, identifying those critical pieces which is related to the technical debt, and if you could clear that, probably in the subsequent sprints the size would automatically go down. So ultimately we should only focus on those very critical acceptance test cases which needs to be part of your regression suite and things like that. But it only can happen, it depends on how much technical debt you already incurred, and there has to be a strategy around that.
Okay, so we have a next question with us. Please allow.
I've already discussed this with you, so probably I want Karthik to answer this. So when it comes to very generally, management comes and asks you about the productivity of your resources, right? The PO shown some slides, some cards where you were trying to make that have the matrices. But are those enough to, because to an extent we are doing the same thing. But when it comes to meeting the productivity, one resource getting a very less code implements, less data, the same resource, next time the story becomes complex. So it's getting more depth, more review comments. So how do you, either of you can answer this, how do you measure productivity for individual resources in your team, and how do you streamline that in your organization while working on an agile project?
By the way, let me just
So to answer your question, how do we measure productivity? I as a product owner don't suggest measuring productivity. There are a lot of intangible metrics that you need to look at. How is he collaborating with the team? What are the key points expediting the feature delivery? Those are items that actually break a person from the desk. Personally, I agree during the performance review, definitely we need to look at the productivity and how much this contributed. That's all subject. But to another point is, we also look at, so there's always a question of, okay, this team is delivering a velocity higher than the other team, so which means the productivity side, right? That's what people perceive. So I've gone ahead and seen this trying to firefight across 6 sprints. In this recent sprint, I went ahead and looked at the other team, and they had bug fixing 45 points. What is that? It's a just generic user story. So you need to look at how much have you really added value to the product. So there's a lot of things you need to do as a product owner to maintain the agile principles and look at whether they're delivering the features and value to the product, rather than is that person working as expected, adding actuals compared to.
Right, Karthik, but when you said.
Sorry, one question at a time, please.
It's the same question.
Yeah, I think let's move on.
Hi, Ankush here, question to Srinivas, please.
Sir.
Having multiple sprint teams when we have common backlog. In common backlog, we have some constraints. We cannot split the backlog, so we cannot divide the features, other teams. So in that scenario, we have common product backlog. What do you suggest? Should we have all the ceremonies separate, or even grooming separate, or some ceremonies we can have common and some separate? Any suggestions would be useful because we are doing this experiment starting Monday.
Okay, so it's very difficult because it depends on the context. To give a general answer that will work for you. So there are some frameworks and so on, but I think all of them dilute the basic principles of Scrum. What I would say is one of the main things, and this may not happen to you, one Scrum team, you need a sufficiently large team to make this happen, and you have to be very flexible about team reorganization and so on. And it's very tricky. It will involve pain. Otherwise, in terms of grooming, it does make sense if representatives from multiple teams attend the grooming together. But then you also have to do it separately, because when you get to the details, if you try to do it common, then everyone loses interest. So you have to do two types of grooming or refinements. One is common and one. That's the only solution I have. Otherwise, I think maybe JP can answer this better actually.
Yeah, I mean, so when it comes to scale teams and there's a need of grooming together and things like that, there are frameworks like you said, Craig Lam's framework, or we have SAFe, different things, prescribe different things. But really, as you mentioned, depending on the context, right? The 2 pointers that will guide you is in your product backlog, if you have a lot of functional dependency, multiple teams working towards the same product, end product, then I have seen in my practical experience, product owners do conduct joint sprint planning or joint pre-planning. Rather than planning, there will be a pre-planning that happens in the mid of the sprint, which will be a joint ceremony to discuss things at a very high level, probably talking about functional dependency across the team. But if it is some other context where you have a high technical dependency, there is no way you can skip this. You have to have a lot of joint ceremonies together. But then the frequency and the duration can be adjusted depending on whether it's a overhead or not, or whether it's distributed teams, etc. So like you mentioned, there can't be a general solution. Exactly. So and in fact, grooming, product backlog grooming is a concept. It's a continuous process that happens right from the initiation towards the end. So pre-planning is just one tool which will enable you to do this, but it will also happen in a user story workshop, for example. It could happen in sprint planning also, for example, right? It doesn't matter. So grooming is a concept, pre-planning is just a tool. So you have to really
So how many questions do we have more? Just a second. So we have 5, 6. What I would request is, if you can, easy, and it will be one-on-one, but for the public. Yes, sir.
Okay, so my question probably anyone other than Dipti can take up. The reason is because there was one thing which on your slide which I was not convinced of, right? You had a box called governance, and there were some 8 sub-boxes beneath that which emphasized a lot of governance in an agile project, which I think doesn't go with the nature of agility and lean and all. So can anyone of you comment as to what do you think should be the optimal level of governance we should execute in an agile project?
This is a question for 3 hours. But to answer.
So 30-35 Scrum teams. It was talking about program governance.
Yeah. I think one thing we have to remember is we have to see that when we talk about a Scrum project that is running in a steady state, everyone is comfortable, everything is going well, then you hardly need any governance separately. You need governance when things could be going wrong or you're in transition. That is why you need it, not otherwise. Look, if everything is going absolutely fine, okay, you don't need a government. every department is working beautifully, you don't need any executive on top. So you need this during transition mostly and when things are changing.
And again, Scrum teams are
So what is the optimal is very hard to say. It is it's really a tough.
But it's not an optional one.
It's not
Governance
optional.
is must needed, but it depends on how frequently do you meet for what purpose.
So obviously, in the large scale environment, we have product governance or even delivery governance. I've seen some companies, but see what is happening is in the large scale transformation, and I'm using the word if the Scrum and Agile is implemented effectively, then you don't need a big deal of governance. But the reality is not that, right? A lot of people goof up, and you need probably. So the governance is a must because there is an accountability associated with the product owner and the product management team when you talk about large scale. It's needed.
Yeah, so the next question, if you can specify the parameters, that would be, you have to identify.
If you can answer this question. So, in a standard services model, what happens usually is we get into a tail-ended delivery model, where in a Scrum, what happens, we give size as 3 points, but the developer doesn't finish it in 3 points. It goes eventually at 5th point or 8th point. What happens is during the end, we see a lot of things getting completed, which is day -1, say 9th day we see, and then there's a huge bottleneck on the testing department to finish everything because we are all running for feature complete, by the way. So this has another problem that in the beginning of the sprint, the tester finishes his test cases and sits idle, and they keep on saying, give me work or give me something to test. Now, have you faced these kind of problems, and what was the solution to that?
Yeah, in the beginning actually we had faced this problem, and what we tried out to do is, in the retrospective we used to discuss all this, and we tried to make it little more standard way, kind of like as and when the story is completed, if possible. So we used to keep a deadline, like if some simple stories are there, let's start it for the 3rd day so that the tester can start off, at least on the 3rd day with this execution. Then 3rd day, 5th day, 8th day, at least if we are picking up 10 stories, give 3 stories in the 3rd day, the next 3 stories in the 5th day. So like that we started targeting some days, because when they give the estimation of the story points, I used to kind of keep a track like, okay, it's kind of these many hours. So definitely in the 2nd or the 3rd day, the developer will be able to kind of implement it. And even they are also experienced, mature people. They are coming back and stating, mostly by 12th of this particular day, I will be able to finish it off. So based on that, we used to keep the targets and used to ensure that the tester is not loaded at the last minute. So that sort of practice kind of helped us. And not only that, even as you said, the tester sitting idle, which kind of never used to happen, because a tester, a cross-functional guy, he either will go and do the desk check with the developer, trying to help the developers to ensure that all the scenarios or the unit testing scenarios or everything is being covered. Not only that, what we used to do is we will prepare the tester to start off doing the analysis for the upcoming sprint also, so that he can kind of act like a BA to help the team to know the scenarios upfront and to be prepared for the next sprint. So always, it's like a teamwork, and they used to help each other kind of.
But did you by any means try to compensate or say that, hey, you know what, you finished the story, the development is over, testing is halfway done, I'm ready to try to say, let's give it a feature complete, we'll not wait. So there was no compromise done.
No, because product owner used to tell us that it's not on the delivery index. If you're not 100% also, that's okay. So it depends on your product owner. He says it's okay, but whatever you completed, give me quality deliverables. That's all his thought is. So we also never used to, and we have to be transparent and honest enough, because if at all, once we are caught, then we are gone. So that perception always will keep haunting us. So it's better that be transparent and give the right story numbers. Even if it is only 5 out of 10, that's okay, but let it be of quality.
This question is basically to Deepti or Karthik. The traditional.
This question is to Mr. Srinivas Chilera. I'm Prashant from Schneider Electric. I'm holding this question since the last panel discussion that you have mentioned, because I'm waiting for the opportunity, as simple as that. You mentioned that management gurus and business gurus. My question is to that. Of course, every company has their own challenges when there is a person who is, leading a company, like a responsible or manager or leader, whoever it may be.
while going for this kind of agile models or techniques or methods, they really, have a lot of resistance or a lot of information needed for them to choose some methods or techniques. So what is your, being a consultant's background, what is your key messages, maybe top 3? Because I would like to hear from you in this forum that how do these management or leaders can encourage this kind of agile implementations? Can you give us?
I think it's, other people also may require. So I think people should look outside the IT industry as well. But within the IT industry, at least in India, a couple of names I can tell you is, HCL's former chief, Vineet Nair, so he said something really different. He said employees first. So this is something really, really different, and we are saying that we are building the company in a sense also for the employees. Okay, and the other person I can mention is Subrata Bakshi, who talks about, he calls himself the chief gardener, and he's got a very different view on how to develop people. These are just some inspirational examples. But I'd like to give, connecting this question to the previous question about appraisals, I'd like to give an example. Has anyone read this book called Maverick? Maverick is written by a guy called Semler, and in his company, this is in Brazil. If you join the company, you can choose your own salary. You can just choose your own salary. Only problem is, what's the catch? So, only problem is, everyone gets to choose their own salary. And everyone's salary is public, including yours. So, it's a huge amount of transparency, and you have to justify why you deserve 1 million as your salary when the company is making only 7 million. Okay, and your colleagues are making only 10,000. So, it's about really changing the nature of work to be much more transparent. We have too much of model-headed thinking and very manipulative kind of management behaviors in many companies. So that has to reduce. If that doesn't reduce, it doesn't matter what you do. You can do anything.
Yeah, thanks. I think the other session is about to start. We have to bring end to this panel discussion. A warm round of applause to everyone whose questions were taken. Those questions we couldn't take. We are sorry for it. What you can do is that you really made a point to address you.
You know what I mentioned was Clark and Clark. So it's about whether the 90% of you in the room are clerks, or the remaining 10% think you're clerks, and everybody on that other room thinks you're clerks, or whether you are Clark. You know what's Clark, right? What's Clark? Clark Kent, which is Superman.
Actually, even does it pronounce as Clark?
Sorry?
Even the other is pronounced as Clark.
Excellent. So now we don't know which we are, Clark or clerk or. So, hopefully in this session, I'm not going to be talking about processes, I'm not going to be talking about PMD, EGMP, CMMI, nothing. I'm going to be talking a lot about the last question which got asked and the one right before that, which is how do you deal with people and what is it that you as managers, because you're 90% of the room, can potentially give greater value and deal with certain situations which I have come across in my life, which are very, very difficult. And in the context of Agile, it sometimes changes the dynamics of the situation. What do I mean by the situations? Potentially it could mean an acquisition. It could mean you have to fire somebody. How many people fired somebody in this room? Okay, good luck, the remaining 97 of you.
I got fired.
He's not fired. So intention with the Clark and clerk philosophy, thanks to Srinivas, is the problem that we often have as managers. Most of us have come through the ranks. Someone mentioned they were first a Scrum Master, an engineer, I think it was deeply probably. And then they came through, they were probably coding at some point, right? You code now? Does your team think you can code today? That is sometimes the problem. Because when you look at that picture, team is often not sure what they're looking at you as. Are they looking at you as the guys on the top? Who are the guys on the top? The captains, the players. There's MS Dhoni and all the other people. Or are they looking at you as the guys at the bottom? With the coaches, the Kirstens or the Watmores. But who came up with the Luvitana and Jayasuriya? Was it themselves or was it Dave Watmore? We don't know, but it could potentially be a coach. So philosophically, what I'd like you to think about as managers is often there is two problems in, especially in an agile world, where in a waterfall model you sometimes have direct reporting relationships, you have assignment relationships, you have potentially appraisal relationships. In agile, it gets even tougher because as it is, the team thinks you can't code, okay? Thus, they do not potentially respect you, and thus they think you are clerks. But you could code, you probably have tons of code. I have 3 patents, I have 7 defensives, I probably have lots of other stuff. And you probably do. So you could code at some point. But the problem really is in the eyes you look at. Does the team look at you as the coach? Do you know how to play the coach? Or does the team look at you as the 6? Do you always have to be the 6? So what I'll really be talking about today is probably sharing some of my experiences in terms of dealing with some scenarios in Agile, which could be useful for you. I'm not going to be exhaustive, it's just examples.
Can I ask a question? Does it really matter if you code or not? Because everyone or any individual is expert in different ways.
Brilliant.
And you don't need to talk about it.
Excellent question. Are you a manager or are you an engineer?
Project manager.
You're
But
project
I was
manager.
coding, yeah. But
Super.
I really need not to code exactly.
It's a brilliant question. That is the question everybody faces every day. The question is that of the value to the company. There are different types of companies which define what value is. Okay, a value in a consulting engagement could be a simple suggestion that do I hold a scrum meeting in this big room or the small room, and you could find productivity doubles. However, in a large number of IT companies, because most of the people come through as engineers and who are somehow taught that the output is code is what works. Okay, when they look at you, and technology is king because information technology, the perception of greater value comes from your technology contribution. Thus, that leads to respect. However, you're absolutely right. Process innovation is equally important as code. But what I'm trying to tell you is when you have problems in appraisals where managers are told you are not hands-on, it's not a difficult problem, right? Lots of times we have people told, in fact, look at the first question that came in this conference. Why is there a managerial track and why is there a technical track? Well, not getting into Nitesh of this thing, does this mean managers are not technical? Is that the presumption?
Yes.
Yes? Brilliant. Then, the guy who's going to be coming into you working as an engineer, producing a lot of code, if he believes that you cannot review his code, if he is going to use a linked list instead of a hash table in order to store 1 million data bytes, and you can't tell him that, and you tell him, oh no, go store it in a linked list, because your access time is not going to be different, he's not going to respect.